Hi, welcome to the second video in our developing a research and publication program that we're running through Griffith University in conjunction with the University in Malang, particularly the Maths and Science and Technology Education Department. This second video, hopefully it's been about a week since you've seen the last one and you've worked through some of the material there and you've got yourself into a study group as well as a writing group. This second one is still about developing the big picture. We're not talking about writing a specific article yet, but looking at ways we can develop a research and publication plan. Now, in my mind, this is one of the most important things you need to do. This gives you a sense of direction and purpose about your work over the next years and helps you develop a coherent trajectory towards where you want to go. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and after you've seen this video, in conjunction with the workbook, there's some activities and tasks for you to do, and included in that is a sample research and development, research and publication plan, one that's filled out, which is mine, and one that is blank for you to work on. Of course, you can modify it to suit what you need. So here's the outline of what I hope to cover in this short video. First of all, I want to answer the question, well, why should you have a plan? Second thing I want to look at is what to include in that plan. Then the third part will be planning research, writing and other dissemination activities together rather than in disjointed ways. And lastly, some practical tips about how to do it. So first of all, why should you have a research plan or a research and publication plan? Well, the first thing is it gives you a clear and coherent agenda. It builds out what you're going to do, in my case, the next 3 years or even up to 5 years ahead. That way you're not just responding to things in the moment, but you know exactly where you're heading. What do you want to be known for? What's your area of interest? What's your area of expertise? And by doing that, you build a trajectory. Now, what I mean by a trajectory is you have a series of publications and research activities and grants and practices that build towards something specific rather than just an ad hoc collection of papers. What's more important than having 50 journal articles is having a set of journal articles that show a clear trajectory towards something, that you're becoming an expert in a particular field and that you have expertise and knowledge that other people don't have. So having a plan helps you do that. It also helps you develop robust knowledge and insights because you keep building on the work you've done before. You don't do one project on one topic and then do another project on something else and then something else. They sort of all coalesce together. Now, often you'll have more than one area of interest, but often you can draw these things together. And if you've got more than 2 or 3, then you've probably got too many. The other thing about having a clear plan is it helps you be strategic. It helps you decide about what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. When opportunities come along and someone asks you to be involved, you can have a plan which helps you make a decision about whether you should be involved or whether you should let the opportunity go. And really the main important thing is it gives you a long-term focus and direction. Where am I heading? And often this started when you did your master's thesis or your PhD thesis. You've set your sails towards something. So for example, if you think about Haberdin, he did his PhD on chemistry and multi-choice testing. So clearly there is 2 fields there that are identified as what he's going to do. For me, I did mine on mathematics education, but not just mathematics education, students' emotional and attitudes they learn while doing mathematics. And then the other thing I did is about how you lead development in mathematics teaching, so it addresses those things. So you can see that they're related. So what things should you have in a plan? Well, the first thing you need to do is list down your areas of expertise and interest. Now these can change and develop over time, but you don't want to end up with a random collection of different ideas based on what the current flavour of the month is. Set them clearly and based on what you really are interested in learning about, because you're going to dedicate a lot of your working life to these things. A research plan should have at least a 3-year time frame. And we'll get to that in a minute, but the first year of your plan will be in much more detail, whereas the third year and subsequent years will be much more sketchy as you fill out the details as you go. Of course, this means that your research plan is always developing and ongoing. It's not just something you prepare now and then you leave it for 3 years and you pick it up again. The third thing it should include is your research projects. All the research projects you're doing, including funded ones and not funded ones. And it also should include the publications you hope to publish from that research. So the publications you do should come from your research. That's what academic publications are. You found something out by doing some research and you're going to share it with people. And the other thing you should include is other dissemination. So by publications, I mean books and journal articles, but you also might do conference presentations. You might go and work with schools to help them develop their practices, those sorts of things. And those things are really important. So, just going into a bit more detail about these things, what should you include in your research plan? Well, your areas of interest are really important, or areas of expertise. Can you list them down? And try and be specific. So don't just say physics education. So what can you be something more specific than just physics education? Is it physics education related to kinematics? Is it physics education related to students' beliefs about the nature of physics? Is it physics education and students' attitudes towards physics and their views of its importance, or something like that? As you think of these things, try and have some that are specifically discipline-based, for example, physics or mathematics or chemistry or science or STEM or something like that, that are based on the discipline, the science-based discipline. The second thing you might have would be educational practice. So this might be pedagogy, teacher planning, teacher beliefs, assessment or something like that. You might have some areas that are theoretical. Are you interested in practice theory? Are you interested in scientific method? Are you interested in Foucauldian theory or something like that? And the last area you might have, and you don't have to have all 4 of these, but often you might have 1 in each, is something methodological. Are you an expert in action research, or are you an expert in multivariate statistics? Or do you work on ethnomathematics, or do you work on something like grounded theory or something like that? So see if you can really work out what your areas are. And if you're only an early academic, maybe some of these are still emerging and they might change over time. But it's good to have a clear idea about what your expertise is in. And it's also important to think about why these are important areas. Why is it important that these areas you have of expertise need to be researched and published about? This is a key because you're going to spend a lot of time dedicated to doing this. Okay, what else to include? Your research. What exactly are you researching? What are the research guiding questions for those projects you're doing? So again, try and be specific as you can, not just some general topic. You know, I'm researching maths. Be quite specific. What research would you like to do? So these are things that you haven't necessarily started yet, but you might start soon. Can you form a basic research question? Other things you need to think about, will you collaborate with other researchers? So when you can, this is a really good idea. When you collaborate with others, you share the work, you generate ideas because you've got more than one person thinking about it, and indeed you can share the load and get more publications out of the project because you'll share the writing load and you'll both put your names on it. So try and collaborate with others where it's appropriate, but make sure they have areas of expertise that coalesce with yours or support each other. Who will be your participants? Think about who you want to research with. Do you want to research with teachers or students or university students, primary school children, the general public? And the last thing to think about is, do you need funding? Now you can do some really good research without funding, but often if you can get some funding, it gives more kudos to your research, and it also helps you do some of the more routine things that you may not have time to do, like transcribing interviews or have a research assistant do some of the data collection for you. So again, as you think about the research that you're doing and the research you'd like to do, you need to think about those things as well and note them down in your research plan. Also, what you need to include in your research plan is your publications. So this is a course about publication, but we put research and publications together because really you should be publishing what you've researched and found out. So, who are going to be your co-authors? So if you're going to write something, is it just you by yourself or are you going to write with others? If in your project you talked about before, you've mentioned that you're going to work with others on the research, then it makes sense to write together as well. But if you're going to write together, be really careful about who's doing what. You want to make sure you've got a team where everyone's pulling their weight, but you're not all doing the same thing. So later on in tips, in another video, we'll talk about how you can manage that, but be really clear about who is the lead. One simple thing I do is if I work with 3 colleagues on a project, and so therefore there's 4 of us, from any project we'll try and make sure there's 4 publications. And one of us will lead each one. And then we'll all come around and work on it. So that way, we all sort of write 1 publication, but we all get 4 on our CVs. The other thing you should think about is where are you going to have it published? What's the journal? What are the journal details? What's its name? How long do they want the articles to be? What sort of articles do they publish? And as you think about where you want to publish, you should have a range of publications. Don't just go for high-end academic journals or don't just go for low-end ones either. You need to have a variety of journals and professional publications and research publications. Other things to include in your plan is about other dissemination. So wherever you can, try and present your findings at a research conference as well. This way you can get some feedback and you can share in a more informal way. Incidentally, if you do present at a conference, and again, you have a very good conference every year, it's a good place to present them. If you have a half-an-hour slot, try and only talk for about 15 or 20 minutes and then give time for questions and interactions rather than talking for the whole time. Think about who are your international collaborators. Now that could be someone here at Griffith. Certainly if you've done your PhD somewhere, and I know most of you who've done a PhD go overseas to do it, then your supervisors should be part of your collaborators that you work with. Maybe some of you could come and do your PhD with us here at Griffith. That would be good. We're happy to collaborate with you. And the other thing to think about importantly is how will you share your findings with the profession? So if you're doing research about education, and let's say it's about school education, how are you going to share your findings with the teachers and policymakers around education in Malang? That's the only way you'll make a real difference. So, if you're planning on researching and writing and other dissemination together, this way that you ensure that your research, because you've researched it well and rigorously, you've got some important things to say. You will have found some things out that we didn't know before. That's why you do research. Why do you write? So you can share those things with others. We don't just write so we get a good CV or so we can have a collection of publications. We do it because we've got something important to say and other people need to hear it. And by writing to other researchers, they can engage with our ideas and help us sharpen them and develop knowledge together. And then we engage in other dissemination to make sure our research has an impact. We work with school teachers, we work with school leaders, we work with policymakers and school, education managers in the region and in the whole country to try and help them implement what we find out, because they're the ones who actually do the teaching in the schools. So a couple of practical tips. A research and publication plan has to be flexible and dynamic, and you should review it every year or every 6 months. So don't write it, put it in your drawer and leave it there. Keep it up as a document you constantly go back and visit to and that you use to guide what you do. It's really good if you can work in collaboration with others. So this, at least for this project, is something you will do originally with your study and writing groups to share your ideas and get their feedback. They will see you sometimes differently than how you might see yourself. But also it's a really good document to have. So when you meet with your mentor or your academic supervisor in your university, to work together to help with your planning. So my research plan, when I go and visit my supervisor, I have an annual meeting, a formal one every year, and I have a few informal ones along the way. And she's like a mentor to me as well. So I always take it along, and we talk about it as a document that sets out what research and publications I'm doing. Finally, focus on what is rigorous and can have an impact. Education research is not just to develop new knowledge, it's to change and improve education in schools and universities and other places. So focus on what's really rigorous and robust knowledge we can find out about that, and then make sure you have an impact. So that's about research and development plans. I'm hoping through the work you do this week in your study groups that you'll start developing one up. There's a template provided for you, but once you've done it, keep it alive through this whole course. It's something you can keep working on. I don't expect you to have it all sorted out by the end of this session or even by the end of this course. And if you like, go and see experienced colleagues like Dr. Haberdin and your head of school or other experienced colleagues who can help you develop it and write a document that will be really useful to guide your career. So again, these are our contact details if you want to get hold of us. Email is a good way to go, and we will try and get back to you if we can as soon as possible. All right, that's this week's video, and hopefully next week I'll catch you again as we talk about where to write and what to write. Okay, all the best.